For most people, boredom feels like a brush with death. Not the death of the body, but the slow disappearance of meaning. Time keeps sliding past, second by second, and yet it carries no weight. That emptiness makes people uneasy. So, from the moment we open our eyes to the moment we finally close them, we keep reaching for something. Our phones, a show, a full schedule, as if staying in motion could save us from that void. The hardest moments in life are not always the painful ones. Very often, they are the boring ones. Boredom is almost treated like a kind of disgrace. Pain at least comes with intensity. Your heart races, your emotions rise. But boredom is different. It is like being wrapped in heavy fog. Time stalls inside it, and the soul seems to lose its bearings. When we were children, boredom was one of our most faithful companions. It sat quietly beside us in the cradle of early life, right where wisdom first began to stir. But as adults, we start mistaking that quiet for waste. We rush to fill every spare moment and forget how much creativity once lived there. Boredom is like a mirror. It reflects the self with unusual honesty. In those moments when there is nowhere to place your attention, you begin to see what is really there inside you. Many people are afraid to look into that mirror. They would rather wrap themselves in busyness, give life the appearance of fullness, and hide the hunger that still lives underneath. Real spiritual practice does not begin on a mountaintop or beside the sea. It begins in an afternoon with nowhere to run. It begins in a silence so still, it almost makes you panic. Boredom is like a pool of still water in the inner world. Very few people are willing to face it because it is too honest. Its surface is clear enough to reflect the fears and desires you have kept pressed down for years. And when you stare into that water long enough, what appears there is the outline of a soul time has overlooked. Only when the lake is without wind does its depth agree to show itself. This is Momentum Arc, a space for inner exploration and spiritual growth. Your likes, comments, subscriptions, and super thanks do more than support this work. They help this energy reach more souls who are ready for real change. Eckhart Tolle, born in 1948, became one of the most influential spiritual teachers of our time through his book, The Power of Now, published in 1997. In clear, understated language, he points to a truth that cuts deep. Much of human suffering comes from clinging to the past and worrying about the future, while real release can only happen here, in this moment. The book has shaped millions of readers and is now widely regarded as one of the central spiritual texts of the modern era. At its core, it touches the very heart of boredom. When external stimulation falls away, what remains is the inescapable experience of emptiness. Tolle says that this emptiness unsettles us at a deep level, but that unease is not the enemy. It is a doorway. He writes that when you are fully present, whatever happens outside, you can be met in peace. That line is more than praise for calm. It is also a reminder that boredom begins to appear when the mind can no longer keep feeding on outside stimulation. You become restless, not because something is truly wrong, but because you are so used to letting the mind take the lead. When it can no longer provide direction, boredom steps in. It is less dramatic than pain, but often much harder to escape. Tolle does not teach us to run from this emptiness. He invites us to stay with it. In his work, the emptiness of the present moment becomes the opening through which awareness wakes up. It is the passage from being ruled by the mind to being at ease in the now. Boredom contains no plot, no climax, no script,
And that is exactly why it matters. It loosens our grip on the story and leaves us with only what is actually happening. The present does not need extra stimulation or a better story in order to be whole. That wholeness does not mean everything outside is resolved. It means there is a kind of inward peace that does not need to prove itself. It does not depend on achievement. It does not wait for some future reward. The strange thing is that this quiet fullness has always been available to us, and we have spent most of our lives overlooking it. So when you feel bored, what may really be happening is this. The mind can no longer get pleasure from its usual patterns, and that may be the very moment you are being invited back into the present and into a deeper way of being. Which raises a question. Is boredom a sign of emptiness in the dead sense of the word? Or is it the first signal that awareness is about to wake up? And why is a state this quiet, this still, sometimes harder for us to bear than pain itself?
Why would a feeling as dull as boredom become an entrance to spiritual life? If you have read The Power of Now, you may remember one of its recurring insights. When we stop trying to explain everything through thought, real presence begins to appear. Boredom is often the first blank space that rises after thought stops working. That blankness is not the same as dryness. It is more like a page that has not yet been written on. Most people feel the need to tear that page out and throw it away, then hurry to the next thing that looks full and interesting. But spiritually speaking, that blank page may be the most valuable moment of all. It marks the point where the mind has finally paused, and the self beneath it is about to come into view. Boredom is not the end of stimulation. It is what remains after the noise has cleared. In that silence, there is no dramatic twist, no rise and fall, no script to follow. There is only the raw presence of the moment. And in that rawness, you begin to see that many of the things that once made you feel occupied were really just excuses to avoid yourself. From early on, we are taught to be efficient, productive, organized. We are told that every minute should yield value, and every day should leave behind measurable results. So we learn how to run fast, how to compete, how to fill our time. What we never really learn is how to stop, how to sit quietly with ourselves without reaching for something. But we were not always like this. There was a time when we could speak to clouds, a time when a pile of stones could become a kingdom. We were children once, and an empty afternoon was enough to open a world. Sunlight, idleness, a few unclaimed hours. These were stages where life met us. In boredom, we built universes. In silence, we imagined miracles. Back then, boredom did not feel shameful. It felt like the cradle of inspiration. Then we grew up and labeled that capacity impractical. We packed ourselves into calendars, meetings, and performance metrics. We locked ourselves inside what society calls usefulness. So when boredom appears now, we respond with panic, guilt, even self-blame. And yet, the ability to stay with boredom was never truly lost. The real challenge is not to find meaning in boredom. It is to stop hunting for meaning there. Because once you stop searching, the texture of life begins to reveal itself on its own. As Blaise Pascal once said, all of humanity's misfortune comes from the inability to sit quietly alone in a room. He was naming one of our deepest obstacles. We do not know how to live with blankness. And yet, the most profound shifts in us often happen in precisely those moments when we think nothing is happening at all. How does boredom become an opening into spiritual life? It usually does not happen in a flash. It unfolds slowly, almost invisibly, as an inner change of state. The first step is to notice that boredom has layers. Surface boredom is the mild irritation of waiting for an elevator, sitting in traffic, standing in line. But deeper boredom is something else. It is existential. It appears when life seems to lose its direction, when emotion keeps spinning but nothing moves, when your interest in the world quietly begins to fade and a question rises from underneath. Does any of this mean anything? Tolle points out that suffering comes from resisting the present moment. The same is true of boredom. The more we reject it and rush to fill it, the stronger the emptiness becomes. But if we stop resisting, if we allow boredom to be there without explaining it, naming it, or fleeing from it, we begin to enter a different kind of experience. Imagine sitting alone on a park bench. No phone, no book, nothing to do. At first, the mind gets agitated. It replays old conversations, rehearses future possibilities, makes noise simply to prove that it exists. But if you choose not to follow those thoughts, and instead return your attention to your breath, the feeling of wind on your skin, the warmth or coolness in your body, then those seemingly boring moments begin to change. They start becoming clear. At that point, boredom is no longer an enemy. It becomes a hidden opening, a narrow seam in the surface of everyday noise, drawing you toward the soundless depths within. This is close to what Eastern traditions describe as no mind. Zen teacher Shunryu Suzuki once suggested that the dull, difficult boredom that arises in meditation is not a failure of practice, but its beginning. It forces you to meet yourself without cover. It asks you to release control, release expectation, and let awareness return to emptiness itself. You could even think of boredom as a kind of spiritual zero point, a place where the mind powers down and intuition begins to wake. From there, you start to notice something simple and radical. I am not the stream of chatter in my head. I am the one quietly aware of it. This shift can also be practiced in daily life. On a long drive, turn off the music for a while. Do not reach for your phone. Just stay with the road and the rhythm. During a lunch break, resist the urge to scroll or watch something. Just sit there and feel time moving. The boredom may arrive first, but if you do not run from it, it will slowly turn into a transparent kind of calm. Freedom is not the escape from boredom. Freedom is the ability to remain awake inside it. When you stop treating boredom like a curse and begin seeing it as a quiet ripple spreading across the surface of the ordinary, something returns. A forgotten contact with your real self begins to come back. Boredom is more complex than it first appears. It is not one fixed emotion. It is an experience that can change shape. Most people only know its earliest and most uncomfortable form: restlessness, emptiness, the urge to get away. But if you do not act on that urge right away, if you stay with boredom instead of immediately trying to fix it, you may notice that it begins to evolve. From a spiritual point of view, boredom can be seen in 3 rough forms. The first is restless boredom. It is shallow, urgent, and uncomfortable. Time seems to slow down. The mind turns noisy. You feel pushed to do something, anything, just to divert your attention. The second is transforming boredom. It begins when you stop running. When you allow the blank space to remain, silence becomes a place of clearing. Buried emotion, old thoughts, even creativity begin to rise to the surface. And then there is the third form, settled boredom. This is no longer a tunnel you need to pass through or a problem waiting to be solved. It becomes a stable inner climate, something you can remain inside, something spacious enough to hold you. It has no sense of direction. It produces nothing. It simply says, stay here. In this third form, boredom is no longer the enemy. It becomes a steady state of awareness, a deep and open presence. It is like an inner weather pattern with no storm and no sunlight, and yet within it, things quietly begin to grow. You can think of this third state as the settling of the first two. Restless boredom reveals the instability of the mind. Transforming boredom teaches us how to remain with emptiness. Settled boredom is what appears when even the effort to transform begins to dissolve. It is not separate from the other two. It is what they become when they are allowed to deepen. And once you begin to observe boredom without trying to push it away, it starts to behave like a deep well. It reflects your truest desires and your hidden sense of lack. This is not just psychological insight, it is a gathering of attention. Something in you begins to rise from deeper down. It does not need language, it does not need a conclusion. It only asks that you stay long enough for it to appear. The third form of boredom is simple, almost bare, and yet deeply powerful. Nothing is being sought. Nothing is being compared. There is no urge to flee, no rush to understand. You are not the one doing a task, and not even the one managing a feeling. You are simply an open, quiet field. And that may be one of the purest and hardest stages of spiritual practice. The moment you finally allow yourself to be held by a state in which nothing seems to be happening. And in that moment, you begin to feel the power of now. Real practice does not happen only in the mountains or in a temple hall. More often, it begins in ordinary moments, when time starts to drag, when life feels dull, when you no longer feel fully inside your own day. That is not the end, it may be the entrance. Boredom is an invitation back to yourself. It asks you to return to the present and stay close, even when you do not feel like doing anything at all. The point is not to get rid of boredom, but to remain with it gently. It does not always mean something is wrong. Sometimes it means you are standing near a threshold. Here are 5 small practices, not tasks to complete, but invitations, not techniques to master, but simple ways of becoming quiet again. Practice 1. 3 minutes of stillness. When boredom appears, do not redirect yourself right away. Find a corner, sit down, set a timer for 3 minutes, and do nothing. Look around. Notice the light, the air, the sounds that come and go. For those 3 minutes, practice being here without adding anything. Practice 2. A meaningless act. Choose one thing that seems pointless: wiping a corner of a table, folding old clothes, cleaning a window. Then do it slowly, almost like a ritual. Notice your resistance to how meaningless it seems, and let that feeling settle. Meaning may not come from the task itself, but from the way you are inside it. Practice 3. A sensory scan. Close your eyes and move your attention slowly through the body, from head to toe. Feel your eyelids, your throat, your heartbeat, the warmth in your palms, the contact under your feet. Do not judge or explain, just notice and admit quietly, "This is how I am right now."
Practice 4. Speak to the one who wants to run. When boredom feels strongest, write one sentence. I want to escape right now. Then ask, why? If the answer is, because life feels meaningless, or I should be doing something more useful, ask again, why do I think that? If you stay with the question, you may find that the part of you trying to flee is not your enemy. It may just be something tender in you, carrying too much. Practice 5. Find warmth in the breath. Use the moments when boredom usually appears, on crowded commutes, in long waits, in the repetition of brushing your teeth. Put down your phone. Let the noise fall back. Bring your attention to your breathing. As you inhale, say softly, I am here. As you exhale, I allow this moment to be. Repeat it a few times. What once felt unbearable may begin to soften. Every moment of boredom is an opportunity, a chance to see that when nothing seems to be happening, something may already be changing underneath. Let boredom become part of your practice, and in that quiet place, you may meet something more true.
We tend to think the empty places in life are there to be filled. So we grab at things the way a drowning person reaches for anything within reach. But perhaps by now you can begin to see something else. Boredom is not the enemy of life. It may be one of its most loyal guides. It does not force itself on you. It simply waits quietly for you to become still enough to let it lead you home. We spend our lives chasing, filling, dividing up our time, our attention, even our souls, and feeding those fragments into a world that is never satisfied. We tell ourselves that if life is full enough, we will finally feel safe. But somewhere inside all that noise, we slowly forget what we look like. So the next time boredom knocks, do not rush to run. Stand up and make yourself a cup of tea. Look out the window. Guess the shape of the clouds the way a child would. Let that quietness open into joy inside you. And in a moment like that, you may understand the grace of boredom. You do not need to learn something from it. You may only need to forget. Forget the expectations you have placed on yourself. Forget the definitions of success handed to you by other people. Boredom can pull you out of useless anxiety and bring you into a gentler peace with the fear of being alone. Abundance was never about getting more. It begins when you finally have the courage to face the empty space. Empty enough to hear the tide of blood moving through your body. Empty enough to sit quietly in a room by yourself. Empty enough to feel the power of the present. And then you may realize that emptiness is not lack at all. It is the place where everything returns to its source. Everything that truly belongs to you begins there. Inside the power of now, a new awareness starts to emerge. You are not someone who has nothing. You are, in the deepest sense, all that you have.